Welcome along. Firstly, any members or officers in physical attendance with an electronic device, would you please mute it to avoid feedback? Any remote participants, which it doesn't look like we have at the moment. If there is anyone listening, can you please keep your camera and microphone off unless you wish to speak, and ideally don't use your camera facility, as this can affect the quality of the IT connection. The meeting may be recorded, and data collected during the recording of the meeting will be retained in accordance with the Council's data retention policy. The recording of the meeting may be added to the Council's website. Members accessing the meeting remotely should use their SBC or KCC laptops to participate virtually. If you join using the link on the website or on mobile or tablet device, it is not always possible to identify you, and you may not be recorded as in remote attendance. I could ask members to please speak loudly and clearly into their microphone and to switch their microphone off after speaking, otherwise remote participants may be unable to hear the next speaker. So welcome members, officers and any members of the public to the Audit Committee meeting. The following staff are in attendance, either in the chamber, and I think everyone is in the chamber. Director of Resources, Lisa Fillery, Head of Audit Partnership, Catherine Woodward, the Head of Finance and Procurement, Claire Stanbury, Democratic Services, Billy Attaway, and then from Grant Thornton we have Matt Dean and Ibi Osai. No other officers in attendance. I take it all members are aware of the emergency evacuation procedure. There is no planned evacuation practice tonight, and if the alarm sounds, those in attendance should leave via the exits indicated to my right and by the lifts, and assemble in the car park outside where directed. If there is anyone in attendance with mobility issues, I don't think there is, that would need assistance. So are there any apologies for absence, please?
Thank you, Chair. I have apologies for absence from Councillor Richard Palmer.
Thank you. Do members take the minutes of the meeting held on the 23rd of October, minutes 365 to 369 as a correct record? Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? Thank you. Right, so then we move on to agenda item 5, the annual financial report 23-24 and the audit findings report. So I think hand over to Matt for that one, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll just do a brief intro in terms of the two papers, and I'll pass over to Ibi to go through the audit findings report, and then I'll come back and do the auditor's annual report. So these are our two key documents summarising our work performed on the Council's 23-24 accounts. I think in broad terms it's a very positive position in terms of both the accounts and our value for money conclusion. I think it's been a really strong process, and I think thanks to Claire and her team for supporting that. I think in overall terms it's a challenging environment, and I think to get to this place there's a lot of noise in the sector around backstop opinions and those kind of things. To be presenting a clean, unmodified opinions to yourself for the council, I think should be commended. So I think it's a really strong place given what's gone. So no more from me at this stage. I'll pass over to Ibi to start with the audit finance report.
Thanks, Matt. I'll take the report as read, but before you use our audit findings report, I'm going to talk through a summary of what we have achieved at the 23-24 audit. Page 12 of the audit summarises the testing that we have to date that are yet to be completed, or majority of this is to do with the review stages. Management have responded to all our queries to date so far, and we're just undergoing the review of the final stages of the audit. Section 2 of the report, which is page 14 up to 23, of your the agenda pack before you, summarises our finding of the significant risk areas of the audit. Where we've completed the work, we've summarised what we've found to date and highlighted to members any areas that we have recommended to management. I would like to take you to page 27 of the agenda pack, where we stated that we will not be able to issue the certificate once completing the audit. This was at the time of writing, and we had instruction from the National Audit Office that we might not be able to issue the certificate, but now we've received further instruction. Therefore, once the audit is complete, we'll be able to issue the certificate to close the audit. Appendix B of the report also highlights the key recommendations we've made to management as part of the 23-24 audit. We've engaged with management on these findings and we've received a response accordingly. And Appendix D of this report as well talks you through some of our key findings from the audit. I'll now pause here to take any questions on the audit findings report.
Lovely. Thank you, Ibby. Members? Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose it's a technicality question, really, about the practicalities. And just to check, I can't remember from last time because it's been a longer gap. Is it standard that these audits are conducted fully remotely? As in, is that standard across the sector or standard for us? And if so, are there any kind of challenges around that? Because I've certainly, at my work, when we audit, we have to give them a conference room and they pile over all of they steal my receipts. And, that feels perhaps more invasive. But I'm just checking if that's kind of standard for the sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
So we offer the facility of a room, and we used to have the auditors on site for 6 weeks at a time, once upon a time. That has evolved with hybrid working. And so the audit this time was almost 100%, hybrid.
The auditors did come down to check the existence of some assets, but I think that was the only thing that they actually came down to site, as it were, for. Otherwise, it was all done remotely.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? Councillor Harrison.
Thanks, Chair. It was on the extra paper. Turn the pages over. On the improvement notices, improvement recommendations, 2 plus one from previous years. I wonder if I might have an answer to how we propose progressing the 2 improvement recommendations, and on the one reminded from previous years. I wonder if the committee might find it acceptable at the last meeting, going forward, at the last meeting of the civic year of this committee, which would be April, that we have an agenda item to confirm or otherwise that we still don't want an independent person on this audit committee. And have it as a standing item once a year. And I say the last meeting of the civic year rather than the first one, because in the past there have been occasions where we've had a completely new audit committee. How can I put this politely? Who didn't have a clue and could have agreed all sorts of things. So that's why I would recommend, I can put that as a recommendation, that we, at the last meeting of the civic year, we have an agenda item to see whether we still have that position, that we do not want an independent person on the audit committee, because then, it gives you the opportunity to give it some thought and decide yay or nay again. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. I think we can accommodate that as an agenda item. Did you want to put that forward as a formal proposal?
Yes, please.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Gibson, thank you. All those in favour of making that an agenda item? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Sorry? Yeah.
So the other recommendations that have been made within the VFM section of the audit will come into play when we start the budget build process for next financial year. And this does tie in with the recommendations that we've had before, that we do need a robust savings plan to identify how we are going to bridge our budget gap. I think that if we do get our funding review in the spring, as we have been promised, and a multi-year settlement for 26, 27, 27, 28, that will make our, it's not going to make it easier, but it will make it will take away the uncertainty of what the gaps are going to be in terms of government funding. So I think that will be part of our budget build process, as it has tried to build in before. So that one we will deal with as part of the budget build. The risk, linking the risks to our corporate priorities, I think a lot of our risks are so overarching, they cover everything. So I understand the theory behind this, and I understand that this is potentially an area that's been brought up in other audits, not just ours. I think where we have got something that is specific to a single risk, we will do that, but there's no point in us writing every risk against some of the priorities, because they cover everything, like our staffing or not being able to deliver a balanced budget. That is practically every single risk that we've got in the every single priority that we have got in the plan will be affected if we can't deliver a budget. So I think there's some work to do on it. It's not as cut and dried as it looks in the recommendation, in my professional opinion.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Lisa. Councillor Worcester.
Just a quick one, Chair. I was really sad to see again that the member to officer relationships has been brought up through this documentation. It should be there, obviously it should. I know Swale's been doing some work towards that, but I think it's worth underlining that this work could move forward faster and be more effective. And obviously, I hope it's not mentioned again in forthcoming documents and reports and things, but the only way that's going to happen is if we move that work forward faster with more efficiency, so that that's resolved. I know we've been doing some work on it, but I think maybe we could have a place here in moving that back to our members and saying, you know, let's really get on with that and make some progress there. Thank you. Thank you.
Lisa, did you want to comment on that?
No, I don't think there's anything. The work is still ongoing. We've got another sessions scheduled for the work that started before Christmas next week. It's also on the radar for the corporate plan, because the delivery of the peer review recommendations ties into that as well. But obviously that is part of our governance, which is why it's been picked up here by the external auditors too. So that one won't drop off, I think, because it's being covered by several different angles.
Lovely, thank you. Any further comments, questions from members? Okay then, thank you. So the recommendations, and I will read through them, but are members happy that we take them on block? Thank you. So I'll quickly read through them. Note the external auditor's audit findings report, Appendix 1. Approve the letter of representation, Appendix 2, on behalf of the council. Approve the annual financial report for the year ending 31st of March, Appendix 3, including the adjustments set out in the audit findings report. Approve the Chief Executive and Leader sign the annual governance statement for the year ending 31st of March 2024. Approve the Chairman of this committee signs and dates the annual financial report for the year ending 31st of March 2024. And note the external auditor's annual report, including recommendations and management responses, Appendix 4. So do I have a proposal for those, please? Councillor Booth, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Carnell, thank you very much. All those in... sorry, Lisa? Okay. Sorry, yeah. So all those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Lisa.
So thank you. Chair, are you happy for me to use your electronic signature to add to the statements?
I am indeed, yes.
Thank you. Billy, if you can minute that.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a report that I bring to you to give us the half-yearly update on internal audit progress. So half-yearly, that might sound peculiar in January, but we don't start our work until June, so it is approximately about half-yearly, given the way the cycle of internal audit work starts. So there are 4 areas of this report that I want to go through with you today. So I want to talk about resources, audit progress on delivering the plan, follow-up work, and new internal audit standards. So the report can be found on page 157 to 198, and on page 161 I've provided some detail about the resourcing for the service. So we have had some successful recruitment. We had a new auditor start in December, and we've got another one starting in February. So we have had some successful, but we do still have some vacancies in the team following the resignation of 2 members of staff towards late summer. So we are filling our resource gap at present with the support of a contractor who's called Verital, and they are actually a local authority company, a local authority owned technical company. So they understand our business when we work with them, which is a really good thing to have on board, and they commenced work with us from November. So this leads on to the second area that I want to talk about, which is delivery of the audit plan. So you'll see on page 162 of your report our table on progress. So far we have completed 2 audits. There are 6 that are currently underway, and what I have included here for you is expected completion dates, so you can see how we are working towards achieving those for this year. And there are 5 that are about to commence. Appendix 2 of the report details the work around those completed audits, and I have had a conversation with our contractors, and we have sought some additional support to make sure that we can get those 5 audits that haven't started yet completed by, we're aiming for the end of April, but it'll probably be May, and that takes us into our 12-monthly cycle. So there are a couple of audits that we can't deliver with the available resources that we had, and I've identified those on page 163. However, since I wrote this report, we have identified resource to be able to deliver another 2 of those audits. So the work that we will actually deliver this year, we will achieve a greater number of audits than in previous years. So despite some of our resourcing issues and the timings of things, it's all hands to the pump, and we will be delivered to provide that annual audit opinion, and I will have sufficient work to make sure I can give that assurance to you as a committee and to the authority as a whole. So the third area that I want to cover off today is the follow-ups, follow-up of management actions, and you can see this on page 164 and 165. So what these tables demonstrate are there are no overdue actions, which is a very positive move for us. I think everyone's too afraid to want to come and show themselves at Audit Committee to defend themselves. However, it works. It works. So, like I say, at present there are only 10 audits that are still in progress from all of our open audits. So 10 actions still in progress from all of our open audits, which is a really good position for the authority to be in. And I have also provided for you on Appendix 3 an additional table, which just gives you a little bit more detail about those. I've done that at the request because I appreciate that you wanted a bit more details on some of these outstanding actions as well, so you've got a bit more information there. But the fact that none of them are overdue, I think, is a really positive move. So the last area that I want to talk about is the changes to the internal audit standards. So on page 166, I provided some detail, and there are a few appendices as well. So as part of delivering our internal audit service, we're required to follow internal audit standards. Previously, we followed something called the Public Sector Internal Audit Standards, and they have been replaced by the Global Internal Audit Standards, and they're accompanied by a supporting Public Sector Application Note. These standards became applicable from the 9th of January, and the Public Sector Application Note to support them comes into play from April. So the changes, the Global Internal Audit Standards actually place greater emphasis on the importance of audit committees and senior management's role in working with and championing the internal audit function. So in practice, the changes to the standards may have some implications for the audit committee, the management, and particularly my service. but we're in a good position to deal with those. So one of the things the committee now have is called essential requirements. So these can be seen attached in one of the appendices. But the reality is we do most of these already. And this is just a process that's been documented so that you can see all of those there. So the appendices that I've provided, they may be useful for you for information. So Appendix 4 is some guidance for the audit committees. So it's Audit Committee Guidance and Toolkit. Appendix 5 is a presentation that the Institute of Internal Auditors did about the standards and changes that's been aimed at audit committees. Appendix 6 details Domain 3 of the Internal Audit Standards, which covers the work of the Audit Committee. So let me know if you've got any questions about it. If you would like me to and you feel it would be beneficial, I'm happy to run a separate training session on the new internal audit standards. However, I have provided you with the information if you wish to note it as well. So I'm happy to take any questions on any of my report.
Lovely, thanks, Cathy. Members, Councillor Booth, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Cathy. Page 162. How confident are you that you're going to deliver property income, election management and free-up planning next month?
Those audits are currently underway. That's for us to get to a draft report stage. So yeah, I'm quite confident we will get those to a draft report stage by end of Feb.
Quite confident. Very confident, yeah. Cool, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
So bearing in mind resources, as in vacancies, you've done really well. So I'm very pleased with this report, especially as I'm one of the ones who kept moaning. I had to laugh to myself when it says global internal audit standards. What does global mean? Because I can think of a global area. Where ethics went out the window a couple of days ago. Does that, does the same standards apply across the world? Is that what it means?
I'm going to jump in before Cathy gives you the proper answer. But if you recall the statements, put your fingers in your ears, Matt and Ibby. The statements we have to produce are now on an international, replaced for global, financial reporting standards, where we then do everything and then have to reverse it all back out again because it bears no resemblance to what we actually need to do as local authorities. So I'm hoping that the global thing is not, but I think with the global analogy, as Cathy's already said, we are already delivering it. And some of these things that are being introduced, a bit like when Claire, not to steal Claire's thunder on the next item on the Treasury management stuff, we're having to gear up our reporting on that because of some of other authorities that have messed it up for the rest of us. And so, we're having to over-egg a lot of things because there are areas where some authorities have been failing. So I don't know whether that is part of that or whether it's just like the International Financial Reporting Standards. It's something that they're trying to make us more private sector when it doesn't necessarily fit, although I think it's a bit different for internal audit.
So it is slightly different in that sense. So the reason the global internal audit standards, they're produced by the Institute of Internal Auditors, which is a global body. And the whole reason for having everybody using these global internal audit standards is to bring all the internal auditors across, and it really is global, performing to the same set of rules. So be it auditors auditing internal auditors, auditing public sector, financial services, any other industry, we're all following basically the same set of standards now, because before there was a huge amount of differentiation between what we could do. And I had a set of public sector internal audit standards which were a little bit different, but now we've just got this whole great big package that we can follow. It's actually made it a lot more straightforward for us all. And fundamentally, we're still doing the same. We're still adhering to standards. There's a huge amount of emphasis now on ethics within our standards as well. Professional courage is something that is spoken about quite a lot as well, which in the public sector context, it's actually a lot easier to do, I think, than potentially in some of the private sector industry as well. And so I think it's more so to give those organisations a bit more teeth, whereas I think within the public sector we did it well anyway.
So we're just taking the moral high ground, and because we ain't got executive orders here.
I forgot we were going to change the name of the Audit Committee.
Thank you. Any other members, questions or comments? Okay, thank you. So we'll move on then to the recommendation that the work completed so far on the 2024-25 audit and assurance plan be noted. Do I have a proposer, please? Councillor Booth, thank you. And a second, and Councillor Harrison. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you very much, members. So we move swiftly on then to agenda item number 7, the Treasury Management Half-Yearly Report 24-25, and that's you, Claire. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So yeah, this is the half-year report, providing with an update on the performance of our Treasury management function so far for the year. Obviously, as Kathy mentioned, it seems funny bringing half-year in January, but it's just the way that the committees fall. It's important that we have an effective Treasury management function to ensure that we manage our finances and cash flows in an effective way, whilst ensuring risks are controlled as far as possible. During the second quarter, the Bank of England base rate reduced to 5%. For Swale, this means that we do continue to do well in terms of our interest receipts on short-term investments. And as our investments are higher than our borrowings, this is overall a positive position for us. Interest rates are expected to fall over the next 18 months or so, but our borrowing is currently on a relatively short-term basis, allowing us to manage the borrowing rate position as rates fluctuate. During the 6 months to the end of September, the Council held borrowing of £10 million and average cash balances invested were £19.8 million. Appendix 1 to the report shows the investment and borrowing balances as at the 30th of September. And Appendix 2 shows the performance of the Treasury function against the indicators that were agreed in February 24, all of which were within target, so there were no breaches. Happy to take any questions.
Members, any questions, comments? Councillor Harrison.
I do think it's worth commenting that I'm not going to say steady as she goes, that sounds boring, but compared to some authorities, shall we say, who have invested, to be fair, as they were told to, go out and make some money, and they've caught very much a cold. I think the steady as she goes attitude of our officers has done us proud. I'll say that much. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Any further comments, questions? Okay, thank you, members. So the recommendations are to note the performance information in this report and to note the prudential and treasury management indicators within the report. Do I have a proposer, please? Councillor Booth, thank you. Councillor Carnell, second. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you, members. So we move swiftly on then to agenda item number 8. Where are we? The Treasury Management Half-Year Report 24-25. So it's Claire again.
Treasury Management Strategy.
Strategy. It hasn't got that one on there.
So this is the Treasury Management Strategy for 25-26. And I'm always happy for my Treasury Management reports to be boring. So this is the annual report to this committee to recommend the Treasury Management Strategy for the following year to Policy and Resources Committee. The policy is reviewed and agreed each year, and the context this time around is inflation is now much closer to target than it has been in recent years, but with frequent movements from month to month, and interest rates are now starting to fall, but doing so quite slowly. We do also now have the change of president in the USA, which can impact the financial markets in the UK and globally. So that's sort of the background into which we're setting the strategy. The strategy sets out how we will manage our cash balances over the year, borrowing when required and investing cash balances in a secure way when we have a surplus of cash. Affordability of borrowing will always be a key consideration, and in terms of investments, security of that money will always be of the utmost importance. There are no proposed changes in the Treasury Management Strategy compared to last year. The strategy sets out the indicators that we will abide by over the year ahead as set out in Appendix 1. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Claire. Members? Councillor Gibson, then Councillor Thompson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Only one quick one on 3.13. I'm just checking I'm checking my understanding of the table and therefore the dates. That loan from Northamptonshire Council should have been repaid last week, 10 days ago. And has it been, is the question that follows from that.
Yes, you have read that right. At the time of writing the report, it was a current loan. That has now been repaid, but replaced with borrowing from other sources.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Mine was only around initial investments in the future, which I was bringing up about housing. It's probably not even in this, but as interest rates lower, have we got any sort of sight or thoughts of investment in social housing that we own when we're talking about security for assets? Is that something that we might be looking for?
Lisa?
So we don't own any social housing at the moment, and we are not a registered social landlord at the moment, so we can't. Our investments for Treasury management purposes, our criteria is yield and security and also duration. So they're pretty instant access, what we've got at the moment. So that kind of long-term investment is not part of our strategy at the moment, but I think we have got the ability to be able to do that. But that kind of investment is more our capital investment, which would be more service delivery than Treasury management. So if and when the opportunity arises, then that could be reported separately. What I will also say about our strategies is that if something comes up ever, that one way or that we can rewrite our strategies. I've been at an authority previously where an opportunity came up that was way over any limits that were in the Treasury management strategy. It doesn't matter, if it's the right thing to do, you can rewrite your strategies to fix it. So if something like that was to happen and wider consideration was needed, if it fit with all of the rest of our policies, you can rewrite the strategies to include things like that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Worcester, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's more of a question for you, actually. Sorry about this. So, very recently, we've obviously had devolution raise its head. KCC have made their decisions and done some voting, absolutely. So far, my questions really have been around the concern residents have got and have passed to me around what's going to happen to their community assets. But I suppose the question for this report is, do we have a plan B for how we're going to handle the movement of our debt and this sort of management system around? And will it be brought back to this committee if, for instance, there are any changes or things brought forward from government that will affect this? Can it come back if there's any changes or, for example, anything to report back to committee? I know it's a fast-moving or slow-moving in some areas situation, but I'd like that reassurance that we're going to see things as quick as possible. Thank you, if they come up.
I think at the moment it's a lot of speculation, and our level of debt at £10 million is a drop in the ocean. What I will say, this is not a political statement, but this is just an observation. The residents of Swale will remain residents of Swale, and the levels of debt that other authorities hold, i.e. Kent, that is still an element of Kent's debt is currently Swale's residents' debt anyway, because that is their upper tier authority. So however that's going to be carved out is a job that we need to worry about. But until the geography is sorted, and actually even if we're accepted on the priority programme, we don't know that Kent's going to be accepted yet. But that level of reorganisation it will be done at a very strategic level. I would imagine that the thank God you're not trying to work with Thurrock, because your authority's debt will stay with you and it will be amalgamated as part of the unitary position. The difficulty will be carving up any overarching positions, contracts, debt, investments, whatever, to share out with the new unitary authorities is quite an exciting piece of work, I think, as a finance nerd. But it's, at the moment, we've got nothing concrete at all. We haven't even been accepted, first of all, and then we don't even know how we're going to be split and how it's going to happen. So, and I don't think it will come to audit, to be honest, Dolly, because it's not going to be Swale's position until it will be the new unitary's position. So it will come to the new unitary's reporting structure. But the devolution and the reorganisation, and I might stand corrected if there's, but I think that will be through policy and resources and full council, because it's much more strategic and overarching and all encompassing than just the auditing and the reporting of the financial position.
Thanks, Lisa. Councillor Harrison.
I think there is a difference between the budget gap which KCC have got, they're spending more than they're getting in, and the debts which a number of councils up and down the country have. Historical debt, which, and I do mean even before my time, where councils borrowed to build council houses. Now, this council, we may have 10 mil now, but I'm thinking premature redemption of debt. When the council houses were sold, we paid off that debt, Swale Council. So the only debt, per se, that we've got is where we have borrowed in recent years to do X, Y, or Z. But which is nothing compared to those other councils up and down the country who owe many, many millions, because that was the way it worked. You borrowed money to build all these council houses. You didn't have to pay it back, but there was, of course, the set aside under the I can't remember the year, but the council house sales, you had to set aside 75% of your sale in order to pay off that debt, even though they didn't pay it off. It had to be set aside to do it at some point in the future. So, all in all, Swaborough Council is amongst very few councils in the country who are in the position where they paid off their debt, their housing debt, and all they've got is what they've, members' priorities at the moment, which is minimal.
Yeah, capital investment, and I would say, that's what we have to do for capital borrowing. It has to be asset backed. It's not secured against any asset, but the borrowing, it has got to be for service purposes, and or it could have been for investment purposes at one time. We're not allowed to do that now. So most of the debts that councils have got is serviceable because it was the business plan in place to do that investment with the debt was that it's part of your revenue budget. I mean, it's other things that are now taking over the social care and special needs education costs are rising, but the underlying debt, I had this argument with my mum the other day, the underlying debt problem is not the problem with this at all. It's the cost of the service delivery. Those debts were taken in good faith, and in if all else being equal, they are serviceable, and the revenue budget covers those costs. It's everything else that is. So that, and even if it might be £100 million, there was more than enough money going through the system to service those debts at one time. So that is not our benchmark of how good or bad the reorganisation settlements are going to be, is my advice.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
I was only looking on page 63 about our investments and who we're with. I guess we have a fairly strong ethical investment standard, but I just wondered how it's benchmarked. And I know ethical and banking are a bit of an oxymoron, but I just wondered how they're benchmarked. And
mostly it's security, so that we don't. It's not just, but our overriding priority is that we can't lose that money. So security is our highest benchmark, and part of the policies, and a lot of the money market funds now do have the ESF, no, that's exceptional fund, ESG, wrong ES, policies behind them. And so in an ideal world, obviously, we would be following that to the letter of the law, but my main criteria is that we cannot lose that money.
No, thank you. Any further questions, members? No. Okay. So we move to the recommendation, which is to approve the Treasury Management Strategy 2025-26 and the Prudential and Treasury Management Indicators. Do I have a proposer? Councillor Booth, thank you. And Councillor Gibson, seconding. Thank you very much. All those in favour? Unanimous. Right, thank you, members. Just leaves me one thing whilst we have our guests here, to thank the members from Grant Thornton for their work on the external audit once again. Well, look forward to hopefully seeing you again next year with another unqualified.
Well, hopefully later this year.
Well, hopefully later this year with this unqualified, but again next year for another unqualified. So thank you, members, and I close the meeting at 9.